This is your lesson on converting between fractions, decimals, and percents. Up at the top, though, there's a couple warm-up problems here with fractions. I'm going to have you pause the video, come back, and then check your answers before we move on. Down here, there's a little table that talks about how to convert between fractions, decimals, and percents. So if we're writing a percent as a fraction, we simply remove the percent symbol and place this number over 100, and we would simplify our fraction. So for example, if I had 75%, I would simply write this as 75 and place it over 100. Need to go ahead and simplify my fraction, which would be 3/4. If I'm writing a fraction as a percent, I can go ahead and divide the top number by the bottom and then move the decimal point 2 places to the right. Or, if possible, create an equivalent fraction over 100. In class, I gave the example, if I had the fraction 3/20, I could easily create this as a fraction over 100 because 20 times 5 gives me 100. So 3 times 5 is going to give me 15, which tells me that this is 15%. Percents are always comparing numbers to 100, which is why we have 100 in the denominator. If I want to write a decimal as a percent or a percent as a decimal, there's this nice little guy. His name is Decimal Percent Man. D for the decimal, P for the percent. If I'm going from a decimal to a percent, I will move my decimal 2 places to the right. If I'm going from a percent back to a decimal, I move it 2 places to the left. Go ahead, give him a nose, cheesy little smile, and a little bit of hair. So Decimal Percent Man. So if you have a fraction like 4/5, you can use mental math to change this over to a percent. This is one where I would say you're going to make that equivalent fraction times 20 will get you over here. So on the top, you would just get 80. So this is going to be 80%. On the next page at the top, there's a table with some fractions, decimals, and percents. The first fraction is 3/8. In order to get to that decimal, you're going to have to do a long division problem. So you're going to put 3 inside, divide by 8. 8 doesn't go into 3. 8 does go into 30. It's going to go 3 times. 8 times 3 is 24. 8 goes into 60 7 times, which is going to give us 56. 8 goes into 45 times, and that's going to cancel everything out. So our decimal is 0.375. Using Decimal Percent Man, you're going to move your decimal point 2 places to the right, so it'll now be between the 7 and the 5, so 37.5, and put your percent sign on it. In this one, 9/15, since we're doing these by hand, I'm first of all realizing that this fraction needs to be simplified, so you're going to make this 3/5. If you're thinking about it, that can easily become an equivalent fraction over 100 times 20 times 20, so your percent right away is 60%. Okay? We can also think about this as being a fraction over 10. So if I did that, that's going to be 6/10, 6/10. As a decimal, 0.6 is 6/10. You could also go ahead and do long division if you wanted. The next one we notice is 0.6, so let's start it, the fraction as 6/10, because you would read that as 0 and 6/10. Simplify, you get 3/5. If you're noticing, this is the same as the one previously, 60%, but you could take your decimal point, move it 2 places over, and add your 0. The last one starts out with a percent of 40. In 40, the decimal's at the end. To change it back to a decimal number, you need to move the decimal point 2 places left. 1, 2. It's now in front. We're going to write that as 0.4. You don't need to keep the extra 0 after, it's just extra. The 0 out front makes it just look a little bit nicer. 0 and 4/10. Simplify, you get 2/5. Percents are always going to compare numbers to 100, so if you think about a test, you want to get a 100% because that's the top score there. Percents can be bigger than 100%, but they can also be less than 1%. So if I have 1.2, move your decimal point 2 places to the right, your percent is 120%. If I have this one, move my decimal point 2 places to the right, I have 0.2%. And 0.9, 2 places to the right, I have 90%. Some people get confused. This number here is a percent because it has the percent symbol. Percents are allowed to have decimals in them, but it does not mean that they're a decimal number. That percent sign is going to take that. So in this set, we want to go ahead and order the numbers together. So we have 34%, 0.38, 1/4, and 2. Looking at these, this can go to a decimal pretty easily. 1/4 is 1/4 or 25 cents, and 2 is already a decimal number. So 34%, let's just make it a decimal. 0.38 is already there. 1/4 we said is a quarter, so 0.25, and 2 is a decimal. We want to go from least to greatest. The smallest out of these is going to be 0.25. Write it, though, back as it was originally given to you. So we took care of that one. The next one would be this one, 34%, followed by 0.38, followed by 2, which is the largest because it's a whole number. On the next page here, there's a couple examples for writing decimals as percents, fractions as percents, and so on. I'm going to have you pause the video, and when you come back, the answers will be here for you to check. Take a second, check your answers to these problems. And that's the end of today's lesson.